What a week it's been. We've been studying through the Gospel of Mark here at the Gathering House Church. And today's passage, which is going to pop up, actually was when Jesus talks about hell. And I decided, well, that's probably a bad one after the week we've been through. I'll save that one for winter when it's really cold. That'll heat it up then. We'll bring out hell in January or something, right? And I thought we'd kind of stop and reflect. It's been such a crazy wild week. We didn't get power back onto the coffee shop here until yesterday morning, and a lot of stuff was tossed and thrown out. That's why there was no pastry goods or that kind of thing. It's been crazy. Anybody still without power? Who's still without power? So several people are still hanging in there. I went joined with a group of volunteers with a Vista city government, that kind of thing, and I went over to East Central neighborhood yesterday with a guy, prof from Gonzaga, who I just met, and we were with the teams of people who went door to door, knocking on doors, checking if everybody was okay, seeing if they needed stuff. Firewood was a big deal, and met some fascinating folks who were just kind of hanging in there, and they were still without power. Some had power. This lady across the street never lost power. This whole row got theirs back on. These four houses, none at all. So it's just crazy wild trying to work through everything and meet people. It was kind of neat how the community was bonding together. And what I begin to realize is in times of some crisis, we realize what comes out of us is what we have invested in. How we've invested in our own character, how we've invested in our own thinking patterns, how we've invested in kindness, how we've invested in other relationships at a time when we need to depend on other people. That's what comes out in the times of crisis. And it's a really good sort of reality check to see kind of how are we doing. And if ever there was a time we were having first world problems, it was this last week. I mean, we had first world hardship. We had to go to our cars and plug in our cell phones on the battery of our car to be connected to the outside world. How many of you did that? How many of you did that? Come on, yeah. I said, got to survive. I got to be connected to the outside world. I got to go to my car, plug in my cell phone into the cigarette lighter. I don't know how Detroit never got word that about the anti-smoking campaigns, because they're still making cars with cigarette lighters. I'm thankful for it. I'm assuming it's North and South Carolina who we have to thank for that. I shall send both those states a thank you note this week. And so I'm kind of experiencing this, connecting to the outside world. The first thing my wife and I did is we get on the Avista site to kind of see, well, when are we going to get power back on? What's going on? And about, you'd read this through the thread of people posting on Avista site, and there'd be some who are saying, good job, Avista, thank you, we're proud of you, keep up the good work. And about every fifth or sixth one was, you dirty, rotten Avista, I've been out of power now for 8 hours, right? 8 hours. I mean, these people are whining and complaining as if all of the electrical grid is all about them, right? And it's been 8, maybe 10 hours without power, and they're ranting against Avista. And I just couldn't believe it. I thought to myself, if this thing goes on longer and we have to resort to cannibalism, we'll eat them first. We'll eat them first because they are clearly the weak and soft, milk-fed veal of humanity. They're not tough and chewy like the rest of us. So that's what I was thinking. I don't know what you guys. That's what went through my head. So I'm reflecting on all of just kind of what's, just the situation. And we've had, it's been really interesting. If you've had power, sharing and people calling and checking in. How are you doing? You got power? Yeah, we do. People swapping freezer space, bring your stuff over, that kind of stuff. And you really start to see people kind of unite and a community gather. And I decided that in light of this week and everything, that instead of doing a normal sermon, we'll try something different in it. It was kind of fun in first service. I hope it's not a bust in this service, but we'll give it a shot. And I want to have a kind of a sharing time on what you're learning about God. Because what I've discovered, I mean, how many times did you go through your house flipping on light switches that were useless, right? I guarantee you walked in your bathroom 10 times and hit that light switch every time you went in because it's automatic. And you're like, oh, what am I doing? There's no power here, of course, right? And it's the stuff we take for granted living in the first world nation. And sometimes we take it for so much granted that we actually lose our thankfulness. We lose our gratitude. We lose our appreciation for the life that we're living until somehow it's taken away. And for us, it's taken away in a very minor fashion. At my house, we still had a gas fireplace I could hit and spark on. And I had a gas water heater, so we were very fortunate. And we still had heat, we still had hot water, even if we didn't have lights, right? So the great hardship is cooking on the barbecue outside in the cold with my battery-operated LED light. Click, click. Oh, yeah, I can see my whole grill, right? That's a first world hardship right there, yeah? And thinking about we live so fat and sassy and soft compared to the bulk of the people on the planet. And so I began to reflect, and the passage that the Lord kind of led me to really chew on a lot was Colossians chapter 3. And if you have a Bible, just maybe take a quick look at it. We're not going to do it. We're just going to do kind of a quick reading of this, but it's great because it's very reflective of, in this situation, Paul is talking to a group of people in the city of Colossae, which is in modern-day Turkey. And he was just talking about kind of making it through hard times and the kind of character you have to be, the kind of personality you need to have, how you need to bond together, what you need to be as a group, as a church. And he says in Colossians chapter 3, verse 12, it's page 806 on these Bibles on your tables. He says, therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another. If any of you has a grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord forgave you. And over all these virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. I like this passage because he's actually talking about like literally getting dressed. The Greek words are words for clothing. And he's saying, when you get dressed, put these accessories on. Mix and match this attire, compassion and kindness and humility and gentleness. Do that all. Check out making sure your earrings go with your blouse and stuff. Make sure that this all matches and put this stuff on. As you dress your outside and you look in the mirror to say, do I look right? Does this all work? He's saying, do that on the inside. Do that on the inside. Clothe yourself every day. Put this stuff on. And I kind of take it that he means put it on, meaning that it's not natural for us. It's something we have to be attentive to. And in times of crisis, like what's happened for most of us in this last week, what comes out of us in the emergency times are what we've been doing to dress ourselves in the non-emergency times. And you can kind of tell you're driving through stoplights, and like most of Spokane gets it. You go to an intersection where there's no light, and most of Spokane figures this out, and they're polite, take a little extra time. But about every fifth or sixth person's a jerk. And you realize they don't understand how this whole system works with the lights out, right? And then everybody else gets a little grumpy. And you kind of realize that, oh yeah, because how you are offline all the time is what's going to happen. That's what's going to come out in crisis. That's what's going to come out in emergency. And Paul's saying, make sure that you dress yourselves on the inside, your soul, your character, spirit. Be conscious of putting on humility and compassion and kindness and tenderness and be forgiving and be forbearing with each other. And over all that, just put on this big coat of love. The big coat of love that ties the whole ensemble together. And then he says, let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts. Since as members of one body, you were called to peace, and be thankful. One quick little three-sentence word, or three-word sentence. And be thankful. Let the message of Christ dwell among you richly as you teach and admonish one another with all wisdom through psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit, singing to God with gratitude in your hearts. And whatever you do, whether it's in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. This kind of repeated phrase there, be thankful, give thanks. And I love this passage about, teach and admonish one another. And every now and then, you guys don't need to always hear from me. Sometimes it's good to hear from each other. What did God teach you this week? What did God teach you about your circumstance, about your friendships, about your family networks, about your possessions, about what's going on inside your heart? And so what I want to do for the next few minutes, and it'll take some bravery of the first couple people, is just I have an open mic here to share. And I want you to come just share, state your name, who I am, and just kind of what God showed you this week, or what he taught you, or what you reflected on. Because I guarantee if you didn't at all consider your life this week in light of what's gone on, well, you got bigger problems. You got bigger problems than a power outage. And I think we all did. I think everybody stopped to think about what I have and what God has given. And I know some of us suffered losses and, different, fences went down and shingles got ripped off roofs and that kind of thing. But in light of what has happened, it's a good time to sit and say, here's my story of what I learned about God or about myself this week. Something I'm thankful for that I take for granted. I think everybody says, I'm heat. How much we just take heat for granted? And those kinds of things we say, boy, a lot of the world doesn't get that. That's something that they always appreciate. So I need a first brave soul to come and share.
Good morning. My name's Pete. I've been coming here for how long? A couple months?
Several months, yeah.
Something like that. Fortunately or unfortunately, I wasn't here for the windstorm, but I got here the day after. I was suffering through sunshine in California. But my grandson was watching the house and the dog, and I didn't lose power. Maybe an hour or so. But my kids are in their 30s. They have kids. And they're busy with their lives. I never see them. I've seen them this week. My grandkids slept on my living room floor. All of them have come over for showers, and circumstances aren't perfect, but I get to see my family. Something that doesn't happen on as regular basis as I would like, but I'm thankful I got to see them, even under the circumstances, even with the mess, even with the dog getting freaked out. But it's been good. It's been cold, but it's been good.
All right. Thanks, Pete. Appreciate it. Somebody else, Rhonda. That's all right. Nobody really likes it.
Hi, I'm Rhonda. This is where y'all can say, hi, Rhonda. Sorry, I guess it's not an AA meeting. Well, I'm really thankful for the same thing, Peter. Our kids live next door, our granddaughter, and I'm just really thankful that we have them close. But also thankful for the distraction of the storm, because we had a recent loss in our family, and so the storm was kind of a distraction to remind me of what I do have, and the loss that we've suffered isn't as great as what maybe some other people are suffering now or will be suffering in the future. I'm thankful that I have family close by. I'm thankful that we had a warm house, that I'm a hoarder and I stored a lot of water so we could still flush our toilets because we're on a well. I'm thankful for people who just texted to check and see how we were doing, and Facebooking and connecting with people that way, and the community that it has really built. It brought me closer to someone in my family who I have not been close with, and I'm just really thankful for all of that. It's been a good storm.
That's
Hello, I'm Marco. I want to thank God for my neighbor. He let us plug in some electrical cords to his back porch, and now we have our refrigerators plugged in, and we have a lamp, 2 lamps, and but we have our stove is able to light, so we have gas. So, and then our hot water is able to be done, so we have hot water, but no electrical in the bathroom, so I can't really shave. So I was going to shave in the living room, but I don't think they would appreciate it. She's shaking her head no. So I was thank God for my neighbor.
I'm Lori, and I thank God because this is the first year we have had power in less than 24 hours. We usually go 7 to 10 days. So we have a lot to be thankful for.
all right. Yeah, they're up at Deer Park. Yesterday I found out from Avista they had 97 different crews working all over this area. And some of the crews were PG&E from California, and they brought up crews from Boise, and they were like, there's still 60,000 people without power yesterday, and they can only bring them online about 10,000 a day, and so it's going to be a time yet. And they were getting a lot of criticism and and I saw 2 guys in a truck. I said, hey, you guys, you get smiled at a lot and cheered? Are people glad to see you, or do you get cussed out a lot? And they're like a little of both. And they said it's just been a lot of work. But man, I told them guys how grateful I was and thankful to, just the things we just don't appreciate the power until it's gone. And then you don't realize how much stuff you didn't get to plug in and have and depend on. So it is great to get it back online. Somebody else share. What'd you realize this week about God or about yourself? Or
Hi, my name is Zach, and God moved my wife and I back in with my parents just in time because the house that we were in had a tree fall through the roof.
Wow. So wait, Jack. So you had just moved out of that house, moved into your
2 months ago.
2 months ago, like we're just gonna rearrange life, and then this tree.
And then the neighbor's tree fell through the roof,
Through the
took
roof.
out the chimney.
Took out the. Oh wow.
Yeah, it took out the living room, the kitchen, and the bedroom.
Wow.
So God moved us in a timely manner.
That's great. That's a big thank you. Yeah, that's a big thank you.
And my parents' house never lost power.
Oh,
So
cool.
not only did we get moved in time, but God kept power where we were.
Yeah,
So
that's good.
I'm Margot, hi. I've kind of looked at this week as preparedness training, and I'm thankful that my mother has canned food like crazy, and we have a pantry, and so that's come in handy because when I came home Wednesday, I stopped by Fred Meyer's, and the place was a disaster zone. There was no food in the frozen area. They must have taken it in carts out to trucks or something, and then the place was full of people. There wasn't a buggy anywhere to get your food into, and so I walked through there. There's nothing in the way of easy to prepare food that's left on the shelves at that point. And so I went up the hill to see if Safeway and the other stores were open. They're just shut. And I finally got around to Rosar's, and what I needed was 3 loaves of French bread. By golly, they had it. It's like, thank you. So I went with the soup that we had on our stove that had gas, which was really handy. But I noticed that there was things that we were missing. Didn't know where the heck the flashlights were. And we didn't have a way to really keep the house warm. And man, is it cold out there with the no heat. And thankfully, one of my students I went to on Friday said, hey, we've got a kerosene heater. We'll bring it over. It's like, yes. So that's made a big difference. I'm really thankful for neighbors and friends and people who've just, pulled together and helped each other. And that's been really neat to see. Whether they were believers or not believers, they've come together and done a lot for each other, and that's been cool.
Hi, my name is Jeffrey, and this is actually my second one I've been through. The first time I had flashlights and candles. This time I'm happy I had it. But where I live, all the neighbors came together. I didn't really, I was thinking, oh, this is cool at first, the wind and all that stuff. And I just went on my daily life, each day, knowing that the good Lord was going to turn it back on. But I've had a few friends of mine that were really, I'm not going to say that, maybe I better not say it, but they were, and what do I do? And so I thought, well, come over here, and I had flashlights and candles and no heat, and so, and also no hot showers. So Wednesday morning, had a hot shower. Thursday morning, cold. I didn't care. I had needed a shower anyway. And my sister was saying, you took a shower in the cold? And I said, when you have to, regardless. So I am very thankful that the Lord is right here, watching over us and saying it's going to be all right.
All right.
And I live just a few blocks away. And I was really thankful because we're in such a routine. We go to work, we come home, we do this, we do that, and we like routine. Oh, sorry. Okay, how's that?
That's better.
Did you hear anything I said?
No.
Oh, I'll start again. Okay, so I live just a few blocks down the road, and I was really thankful for the time that I got to spend with my husband and in actually paying attention to each other because of the routine we get into every day. You go to work, you go shopping, you do this on weekends, this on Saturday, and just daily life, just trying to get it all done. But I really enjoyed having the opportunity to have no television, no phone, and being able to actually talk and be with each other without feeling that you were not getting things done. So it was a great time for that.
That's good stuff.
Okay, my name's Ginger, and I'm thankful a lot of things. But it was a time for Lance and my husband to be down, much like Sherry. But he was sick the whole time. I mean, his back was up. I mean, just very. I'm sorry, I have a speech impediment, but his back was so bad. But he would, if the power was on, he would have gone to work and suffered because he's such an honest man. He didn't want his company to think about him. But they were so kind that let him there he didn't have to go back and fix the knee or anything. They said, go take the complete week out, being out. So that was a blessing because he got to be down and get his body healed. Also, I also had a lot of thinking a lot about all those refugees that are in Syria and all those little children, because I don't know if it's cold there or what, but really think how blessed I am and how spoiled I am that I couldn't live, just live in the desert or wherever they are. But it made me pray those people more. So that took me closer to God and just and thinking other people who have so much less than we have. And we were so spoiled in this country, and just made me actually more, what's the word? Somebody give me a word. I always need humbled. That's the right. Thanks, babe. He does that good for me a lot. he's my brain, so he should be the one up here. But anyway, it just really made me humbled on how much we have, and I just made me more prayerful for those people who have less. That's all.
Thanks, Ginger. Yeah. It's that gratitude feeling of most of the world lives differently than we live. We take for granted how incredibly fortunate we are. Just the sheer fact you were born here instead of there. You didn't earn it, you don't deserve it, you didn't achieve it. You were just born here. And there's times just to stop and say, Lord, just thank you for what I have, and help me to be more generous with what I have, because when I'm grateful, the generosity comes out. Jim.
Yeah, my name is Jim, and just spinning off that was kind of, my thing started, we lost power when we got home, whatever, that was Tuesday when I got home from meetings, and it was on for about an hour, and I'm blaming Bill Davis because I just texted him and said our power has been on, and I hadn't hardly hit send, and it went off again for 3-4 days. So holding him fully accountable. But that part showed me how selfish I was, because I was so glad when I got home and the power went out. It was like, oh, this is horrible, and poor me. And then when it came on, life was good and I was secure again. And where does my security come from? It shouldn't come from a light switch. And then spinning off what Ginger said, that was the thing a couple days later, is how much of the world right now with the ISIS thing going, this is their constant life, way less than what we have. They don't even have shelter. And somebody may just show up and shoot them. You know what I mean? For no reason at all. And so that was kind of my thing, is we really, if nobody's, it's not that big of a deal. It's just an inconvenience. And the thing that we as Americans, at least me, are so good about is that during the times of the storm, I think I've got it down pretty good. And a week later, it's all gone. And I'm right back to being an American, living a life of comfort and taking for granted all those things that, as Pastor Rob said, we're just, no other generation, no other place on this planet has ever had it as comfortable and as easy as we do. Everything from the electricity and the lifestyle to even, our faith isn't even challenged very often, not in America. And so that's the piece that I want to carry, and, maybe you too, is remembering this week and remembering that these are gifts, remembering how good we have it, and thinking about other people and lifting them up. That this is, what we had was an easy, great day for them. Every day's way worse than ours. So, when Ginger was speaking, it was like, God was talking to both of us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, my name is Chuck. I'm an Allstate Insurance agency owner, and so we obviously got inundated with claims, and we got to see all kinds. I had the opportunity to see people who, like Norm, guy is 80 years old, has a nice house up in 5 Mile, I think, and he was standing in the kitchen looking into his living room, and there was about 200-foot ponderosa pine or something, snapped off 60 feet above his house, plunged down into his roof, came all the way through the roof, all the branches and everything, came down, hit the drywall snapped, swung, and whacked him on the butt and threw him in the living room, okay? And he's fine, as well. I know. And he told it with such vigor when he came in. He was real proud of himself, so... and he was super gracious and just a wonderful guy, and he just kind of wanted to know how to proceed. So, we have an opportunity to allay their fears and tell them kind of what steps to do next. So that was great. And then after him, we had, repeated people that came in, and they lost a few shingles, and they were, often really ticked and frustrated. And it was comical to see the differences, of how people react. Yeah, I've lost a bunch of shingles, and oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And my deductible's this much and all that, and they're definitely in fear and frustrated and stuff. And so we talk them off the ledge and comfort them. And, as a Christian too, I have the opportunity to provide peace, for people, for them to share however they want. If they're mad or frustrated, it's the, a soft answer turns away wrath. And so you have the opportunity to do that and really win their, earn that relationship by just not taking offense and being a light to them in this dark time. So yesterday, I was in on Saturday, and this a lady, one of our customers, single mom, she has a home she rents, and a young kid, I think he's like 8 or 9, and no power, and she's been huddled in her house with her blankets trying to make it, right? And she calls and says, I have nowhere to go. I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, I have nowhere to go. And I'm like, well, what's going on? And she said that Avista came and looked at her house and said, okay, you got power lines down the backyard. Stay away from those. We'll get there. And okay. And so yesterday would have been, actually, it was Saturday morning. She heard, like at 6 a.m, she hears outside, and boom, fire starts. So she's in the house with a kid downstairs sleeping, and she gets up. Oh my God, it's on fire! She calls the fire department. Fire department comes. She runs downstairs to get her son, and goes around the corner, and water's everywhere. So it's like, poof, 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 poof. And a water line had broken as well, burst overnight, and was filling the basement too. Okay, so the fireman, she calls them in the house, has them come in, turn the water off, and she's utterly displaced. And she has no money. She goes, Chuck, I'm a single mom. I'm like broke. I don't have any money to go out and even start into a hotel. I don't. My credit card's maxed. My bank accounts, I just don't have it. So what can you do? So I made some phone calls, and we wound up getting her into a place and taking care of her, get her going. Then Allstate will come and help her out. So we get to hear these awesome stories. And for me, 2 of the people on staff are Christians, and so we're praying for these people and just providing peace. So I think, like a lot of people are saying, as Christians, we have the opportunity to be that bright light star beacon shining out into a crooked and perverse world that's, struggling. So good stuff.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi. I'm Anika. I'm going to suck up a little bit here. So when we lost our power, my sister brought in her coworker, and she's a single mom with a 16-month-old kid. She lost her power too. She's living in the Salvation Army apartments, but she had no flashlights. Her food was going to go bad. So she had nothing, and we didn't really have much either, but we took her in anyway for 2 days. I gave up my bedroom, and her and her son stayed there, and it was great. We all had fun. Her son played guitar with my dad, and we just hung out and had a great time.
Coming out about this storm, some people were just going, oh, it's just going to be a little wind. And I had in my mind, it was kind of like, hey guys, there's going to be something different here. And I know that I always have to trust in the Lord, but I will say I was nervous. So I checked with my supervisor, and I said, because people were being let go at 3 to go home, and I said, I'm kind of nervous. Would it be okay if I had my husband and our pup Jazz come down? And that was okay. So I had Mike come down, and he brought some pizza, and we ended up staying till about 8:30. And I just told Mike, I said, I just really don't want to go home. We've got 6 about 8,200-foot trees in our residential, on our property, which is just in a residential neighborhood. So I have this thing about the wind, even though I've been through all the storms here. So he suggested, well, why don't we just get a hotel? So we ended up getting a hotel, Mike and myself and Jazz, got a little bit of rest, and I said, I don't want to turn the TV on. I know what's going on. I just prefer not to see it. And all this time I'm still thinking about, like Mike said, there's nothing we can do. And I said, I know, and I'm thinking in my mind that the Lord has everything under control. There's nothing I can do. I'll just have to see how things play out. So the next morning we get up and we go to our house, and as we hit the one intersection, because our house is kind of in the middle of the block, I look down, and in our front yard we see the root ball of one of our 100-foot trees. Well, the tree is across the sidewalk, across our yard, across the sidewalk, into the street, didn't touch anybody's houses, didn't touch anybody's cars. And then we see a white van there, so we drove by and we figured it was a city van. And we said, well, are you with the city? And he says, well, actually, no, I'm a good Samaritan from a couple blocks over. I'm just trying to help people out because it's probably my understanding that the top of the tree was blocking the street. So he was taking his chainsaw and trying to get some of it out. So I said, okay, we just got home, which was about 10 in the morning. So I mentioned, gentlemen, I said, just let us park our car and we'll come out and see what we need to do. We got our car parked and we went back out, and about that time he was leaving, and Mike says, well, can we give you anything? And he said, no, it looks like you guys are pretty good. I said, I'm going to go down the other streets and see what else I can do. So he wouldn't take anything. He said, hey, thanks. And so then, the wheels start turning of, what do we need to do? And thinking of who we could contact. So we were going to go see this couple that every morning when I walk to the bus, I see this couple sitting out, and I just wave to them, and we always just say hello to each other. We don't know each other. We're sitting in the car to go over there, and then Mike gets a text from one of his friends. Says, how'd you guys do? Because he lives about 3 blocks up. Mike says, well, we got a tree down. And he said, I have a chainsaw. Would you like me to come up? So Heath came up, and we started working on the tree. And I told Mike, I said, I'm going to, since you guys are here, I'm going to go see if I can talk to those people that I see every day. So I went, and the wife happened to be home, and I said, we've never met. I'm the lady that walks by every day. She said, did you guys need some wood? I said, we don't need wood. I have an 80-foot tree that fell down. And I said, I didn't even know if you guys, did that. She said, well, yes, we do. And she said, my husband's in having lunch. I'll get him. So he came in and introduced himself. I told him, hey, buddy, I'm your neighbor. He said, yeah, I recognize who you are. So I said, I'm looking for somebody possibly to help us out. And he said, I got a guy out right now. He said, I'll get a hold of him. And he said, we can probably be there within an hour. He said, do you want us to give you a bid? I said, I'm good with you. Let's just do this. So these 2 guys, the one with the chainsaw and then his boss, came over within the hour, and we started working on the tree. A big trunk. We first cleaned up kind of the street, got it in a pile. Then I said my main goal was to get it off the sidewalk that day. So we did that the first day. And then the second day, they came back and took as much as they could off the trunk. So we got everything ready. So I woke up this morning, and the big pile that we had in the street for the city is gone. These gentlemen still have to come back. We're going to get rid of the stump. During pretty much this whole time, I was thinking about the people in the war countries, about, the devastation that they have to deal with. Even, we went through this disaster. And then the other thing mainly that I always think about is the loved ones that have gone before me that are up in heaven. The only thing that I could think of through this whole time was I always talk to God, and I always talk to the ones that I've loved that are up in heaven now. And I just knew that they would be protecting us. So I just know that it was them who laid this tree, 80 to 90-foot tree, and didn't hurt anybody. So I am very thankful.
My name's Ted, and I was in the kitchen, and of course the power was out, and I won't tell you the very few hours that we were out of power, so we feel very grateful at our household for that. So we didn't lose it for long. But anyway, when it was out, I was in the kitchen lighting some real candles. We had some electric ones too. But and my stepdaughter said, or I said something like, this is what they used to do, like before electricity existed. And she said, they did this? So it just reminded me that it was cool. It was a cool moment for me to remember, to live in the time that we do, and to be thankful for inventions and people, individuals, and everything. It's a great time to be alive, But also, it was a great time to be alive a long time ago, and to apply some things in my life today. It just really made me meditate on the simplicity of things, and how in a sometimes crazy busy world, it's mostly in here anyway, and if I want to live simpler or more simply, then I can, and it's a choice, and it's an easy thing to just shut off my cell phone if I'm feeling a little stressed about phone calls or that kind of thing. And also, I don't even need a cell phone, you know what I mean? So I was talking to my family yesterday about how I might just get a landline and a voicemail system, or however that works these days. But just get rid of a cell phone, because really there's no emergencies. That's why we have God. So that's all I have.
Good morning. I'm Laura. Um, I learned a few things. I work with Providence, so this power outage, I've learned how a huge corporation it's a Catholic charity, how they really pull together. I didn't have babysitting, so Sacred Heart opened their daycare. I got some babysitting. Hospitals opened their showers. They offer beds, food, everything. So it impacted me how a large corporation, could just pull it together for their employees. And it also impacted me. I realized I'm not really prepared for emergencies. I had these little tea lights and some crackers, and it taught me that I need to be very well prepared. We're in the Pacific Northwest, and while I'm listening to stories from you guys and reading and at work, how everybody pulled together, it kind of made me sad that I didn't have the equipment or the supplies to help others like Laurel did here. And so it's teaching me, okay, let's get prepared. And if this should happen again, I could be a better servant. And I'm so grateful for people who do pull together.
In the time when you're suddenly in need, you really realize not so much about the stuff, but the relationships you've invested in, right? That's what really comes to light, is the relationships I've invested in. Who's calling, who cares, who's got stuff, who's sharing. And that's a great reflection sometimes, too. If you were kind of down and out and nobody called you at all the last few days, I don't know, maybe it's a good time to think about, I need to reinvest in the relationships I have. Somebody else, give us a sharing. What went on this week that you got to think about?
I'm Alice, and we got the call at school. Everything's canceled. Go home. So, of course, I didn't go home right away. I had stuff to do at school, so went home, and I had power. So the first thing I started doing is I started cooking. So I had some pasta. I made some stuff, and then finally, at about 7:30, this big old pop. I thought, went out to the back. Part of my fence, and I said, it was just the fence that fell down. No, it was the transformer that blew. So there's everything was black, and it's just like, I found a headlight, had to get the duct tape out because it was broken. So, I'm trying to duct tape it together, put it on my head, and this was a perfect time to finish reading a book that I had started called The Pearl by Paul Thika. And I got through the whole book. And in the end, the pearl's Jesus Christ. And so that was really impactful to me. And then as the power continued to be out, I was thankful for these stupid lights that I had bought for my closet, just so I could see what I was getting to. Well, luckily, I had AAA batteries, and so I was able to put those around. But then as the days continued, I found out that my brother-in-law had a generator. He'd given it to my niece, and so she used it. Then her power came back on. Then it went to my sister, and then her power came back on. And then finally, on Thursday, it came to my house. And so since I had the generator, I also had gas hot water and have a gas fireplace also. So I just had started calling around to people, that I knew that might not have power and hot water. And I felt I was so blessed to have those things. I needed to have somebody to share it with. So I was just kind of calling people, checking on neighbors and stuff like that. And then the power started coming on across the street. And still, our little 2-block area still doesn't have power. But, hot water, heat, that's a blessing in itself. And so still, you don't know how much your neighbors feel comfortable, so even though I said, I have hot water, come and take a shower, whatever, you don't know them well enough that maybe they'll get desperate enough that they will come over and, take me up on my offer. So I'm just waiting.
I'm August, and I work at Whitworth University. And so if you probably turned on the news, you probably saw Whitworth. It was horrible. And we've experienced this a couple summers in a row. But at one point, it was like, what are we going to do with 625 students who don't have what they've paid for, power, heat? What are we going to do with these people? And so I got recruited or volunteered to hop in a pickup truck and drive to Moses Lake to pick up big generators. So I had this 3-hour drive to Moses Lake to just sit and reflect after the day, Tuesday night and into Wednesday. and just being at Whitworth and experiencing it. And us groundskeepers, I'm a groundskeeper, so we have this kind of thing that if trees could talk, right? What if trees could talk? And and it is kind of funny, but it's like, we've experienced mass destruction on campus because of our trees. And my wife even asked me, she's like, well, how do you feel? And at first, I didn't really know how to answer, but as I've sat and reflected on what trees mean and what God's creation means to us, and experiencing that loss, it's forever changed. And the history that those trees have seen on our campus is gone. And so it is very sad. And Saturday night, I teared up a little as I began to just think about it, and to think of the stories that those trees have seen. And so what it taught me as I was driving, it just made me sit and reflect on the people who have been through that place. Most of Spokane has been on Whitworth, and I hope and pray that you've had an experience of peace and shalom while you've been there. That's what I work for. And so to see that be changed now for generations to come, this storm was up there with the fires of the early 1900s. Our city will be forever changed after this storm. And so as we sit and reflect, it allows us to remember what it used to be when we didn't have those necessities. But now, how do we move forward without, and what it's taught us. So anyways, that's kind of what I've been thinking, is just the historic impact that this storm has had and how it's going to change. And I hope it changes us for the better. But there you go, from a groundskeeper.
Hi, my name is Gary. I don't have much money, but I have abilities. I have relatives in Deer Park, and I was very thankful that I'm handy with a chainsaw because it needed a lot of that up there. It's a lot of pine fell down. It's not really good for firewood, but it's in the road. Got to get it out of there. So I'm very thankful I was able to help with that. Good friend of ours, a tree fell through his house up there, able to help clear things up out there. And I just feel grateful that I have abilities, and abilities to give to other people is always a plus. Thanks.
About 4 days ago, I got an email from the city asking, could we use the Gathering House as a staging ground to reach out to the community? Could you be the place where we dispense blankets and food and maybe a warming center? I said, we don't have any power, or I would love to. So we're still talking with them a little bit about, as the week unfolds and they're still getting some homes in this neighborhood online, they may use the Gathering House as a place to stage food, blankets, that kind of thing. We said, of course, our congregation would love to do stuff like that. And it's interesting, the skills that suddenly become super crucial. Someone who knows how to work a chainsaw safely and well and wisely suddenly becomes super important. And we take that kind of stuff for granted when it's not around. So it's great. Come on up and share. Come on up and share.
Hi, my name is Brian. Like you, I have a lot of skills too, but my power is off, and I'm normally one of those guys that actually goes out and really helps people. But now I was forced to be in a position where I needed help. And so I'm thankful that I actually have friends, and I had a couple of friends that have power that allowed me to go and shower and, fed me and gave me some warm coffee, which was very nice. And but I'm thankful for the clarity and the focus that God gave me throughout this whole time, because normally I get off work and I take a nap and then I go shove my nose in the computer working on stuff that I can call, oh God, this is stuff for God. But he took that away from me, and it was very nice not having any of that and just be able to reflect on what he wants to do and where he wants to go, and to be super focused and have the clarity again, and actually to be able to be willing to receive, the gift of the people that are in my life to actually help me out, and that was really nice.
My name's Alyssa. I'm Ted's stepdaughter. I was driving, headed to the dollar store to stock up on candles because I knew the power was going to go out. And I was with one of my sister's friends, and I was driving her home, which is in the opposite direction of where I live. And all of a sudden, just darkness for like a mile in each direction. And I was terrified. And I'm like, she's like, oh, this is totally fine. This is so much fun. And I was like, you're not the one driving. And so I get her home, and she's out of power, and then she has a niece, and I was like, well, you guys be careful. She's like, well, we got candles. I'm going to have my sister take me to go get flashlights. I was like, okay. So I head home, and our power's still on, and I set up all my candles and light them all and prep everything that I needed for the next morning, and I'm watching Friends on Netflix, and power goes out, and I was like, man, I'm not going to be able to charge my laptop, because what do I do when I have nothing else to do is watch Friends? And then my next thought was, well, I'm an in-home caregiver, and I know somebody who eats via a feeding pump, and it needs to be charged overnight. And if it's not charged, they're not going to eat. And so I was very thankful that the next day I was told that, well, their power was only out for 2 hours. So she got to eat overnight, and that made me really grateful. And her mom said, well, God was looking out for her. He knew she needed to eat. And I said, it's exactly true. And she says stuff like this all the time, and it really makes me think that, God really does watch out for people who really do need it, especially people who can't help themselves. And that was like an eye-opener. And then Thursday night, I was headed to school up at the falls, and I took the back road, and there's a lot of cemeteries back there. And I'm driving around a corner, and there's a trampoline hanging on trees, and I was like, well, thank goodness it didn't fall in the road, and it's just stuck there. And then I'm driving past the cemeteries, and I just see tons of trees falling over headstones, and I was just like, please, God, bless these people. I know they're past, but it's still a really hard thing, especially if they're newly deceased and they have family, and they want to be remembered, and now it's going to be hard for them. And that was just the first thing I thought of, and I was very grateful that I was only out for 24 hours, and my teacher said, I'm not going to be at class tonight because I'm dealing with a power outage, and I even have to come to the school to shower. And it's very grateful that I had my mom to have me shower at her house while our power was still out. And then my grandparents' biggest problem was, well, the furnace isn't working when our power came back on. And I was like, well, at least we have power. And so the power, our furnace got fixed and everything. And then his next problem was, well, it smells like burnt plastic because my grandma left a plastic bowl on the stove and forgot to turn it off. And so the whole house smelled like burnt plastic. And I was like, I don't care about that. I have a warm blanket tonight. And it was just really weird to me that the best thing that I was thankful for was something that I actually had no control over. And their biggest worry was the burnt plastic smell. And my grandpa's like, well, our house is just a mess. And I'm like, well, we had no trees fall down near our house. We have hot water. We have a warm house. We have blankets and candles just in case. And I was just like, well, at least I know I'm grateful for something, and I know other people who are grateful for things like this. So this whole thing kind of put things into larger picture for me, so I was very thankful for that.
And I drove by this house right over here on Monroe in Providence, right? And this guy's got this huge pine tree laying on his roof, and the root system is upended his fishing boat, and it's hanging about 15 feet off the ground in the roots. And I'm just thinking, now that guy's got it seriously. He's got the problems. So, it does make you stop and just start thinking with gratitude of just all the stuff that could be. And it's helpful for us, especially us Americans, who are a little bit driven by our materialism, to stop and reflect on what we need to be thankful for and what we need to appreciate. Somebody else share. What happened to you this week that you really started to reflect a little bit more, have a relationship change, or have thoughts change, or what you were thankful for?
Hi, I'm Kelsey. I was at work. I work up in Kendall Yards at Spa Paradiso, and I was at work when the storm started to hit, and our power was kind of glitching in and out. And we ended up closing early, and it was just me and my owner, and we're closing up the tills. And I was like, well, I better check with some of the ladies who work front desk to see if they got home okay. And so I was texting them, and one of them is a single mother, just recently moved over from Yakima. And she's like 23, and her whole family just is awful. Like, her mom didn't even reach out and see if she was okay, and her son's only 6 months old, and he has croup. And she's out living in Salvation Army. So I texted her and I was like, are you okay? Do you have flashlights? Like, how are you doing? And she's like, no, our power's out. I have no way to cook dinner. Nobody's reaching out to me. I have no flashlights. And so I was like, okay, well, let me come get you. I'm on my way. And so I drove all the way to Salvation Army to go pick her up, and we drove around for probably an hour trying to find a place that's open because we had no power at our house, so I had no way to get food. So we drove around and finally were able to find a place to get food. I got us all dinner and I drove home, and I introduced her to my family, and it was amazing to see that in a crisis, no matter what age you are or what walk of life you're on, that to be able to bring her into a Christian home and see how God calls us to, help the poor and help the homeless, to be able to bring her in and show her the love of Christ, even if it's just sitting around with no power, but for her to walk in and see a functional family and people who are laughing. Dad brought out his guitars. We were playing music with like old camper lights that I'm surprised we even had because we don't camp at all. At all. So it was amazing and she stayed with us for a few days. So what I learned in this is, even if you have power, if you don't have power, we're all kind of on our own journey, but to be able to reach out to people who are even more helpless than you are really taught me that God calls us to be more than what we are. And it was a wake-up call for me to kind of be like, instead of being a Christian by proxy, I now have to walk my own journey. And so her and I have gotten closer, and her power's back on, and I drove her home. And it was just a huge wake-up call, and I'm so fortunate that even though I had no power, I have an amazing family and great friends who were able to reach out to me, and this girl who had absolutely nothing. And so I'm just so fortunate, is what I really learned. And so even just driving around, it's amazing to see how the community's coming together in a crisis. So just fortune is what I'm thankful for.
Somebody else share. What is it you learned this week? What happened?
Hey, I'm Vin Koss. Just moved back to the area after about 25 years, and came over most recently from Georgia, where we get ice storms a lot. And so we're kind of used to having the power out, but now we're in a new place, so we had to kind of deal with it differently. And just, several things I'm thankful for, some good experiences that kind of happened along the way of being back over here again. One, just that first night, it was actually kind of scary fun in a way. We knew something was happening. We knew it was bad. We're all like scared. We're all hoping that something horrible doesn't happen. And family got together and we played board games and, watched the horrible wind come and, just kind of all were quietly praying that, hey, nothing horrible happened. Please let us get through this. And we did. And it was a great bonding time. And then, getting up in the morning, there's no power, and oh my gosh, there's no coffee, which was a horror. Driving around, finally finding an open McDonald's, and it's like, oh, okay, I'll go in here. And, just lines and lines of people waiting for coffee. It was like, oh, I'd like, 4 McBiscuits. And it's like, oh, those will be no problem. And 3 coffees? Oh, well, that's going to take a while, But all the people who were working there were being so patient. And all the people who were coming up and ordering were also, hey, it's a line. I'll get in line and I'll wait. And reminded me of like friends who got stuck in the airports when they were completely shut down in Denver. And how the people stayed and worked at the restaurants and fed everybody and make sure that they were okay. All the people working at this McDonald's, young people, some older people, they were so gracious. And everybody was so good to them. And I just thought, okay, there's some good, humanity going on right there, which was good. Also that we're still without power and moving back and having great friends who said, just come over and eat. Come over and do your laundry, which I did go by and pick up this morning. I forgot it there for a while. But that there are people here. And then the sense of humor. Oh my gosh, having a sense of humor through all this has been so great. So I go out and plug in my phone in my car and come back and read my Facebook page. And people talking about like, oh my gosh, I can't believe these people with power. And, this was a joke. They shouldn't talk about power in front of me. I have no power. I'm personally offended by these things. And just the whole PC thing going on was great. And just having a good time talking about, the veal of humanity and how we would cook them. I think keeping the sense of humor through all of this has been really important. And I'm just very grateful to be back with friends who can laugh and joke about this. And, that's been great for me.
I like how Spokane actually responds really well in crisis. Some cities get a bad reputation for when lights go out and things go bad and there's looting and pillaging and just it gets ugly. Spokane always seems to rise to the occasion. And one of the things we were doing knocking on doors in the East Central neighborhood was telling them, okay, this school, and this school, they're open for breakfast and lunch for anyone who wants to come get a free meal. You have these schools that kind of light up and people come out of, giving their free time and working and cooking meals for people and knocking on some doors and people saying, well, we're almost out of firewood. And to be able to say, well, SNAP is giving out firewood. You just call SNAP and they'll be by with a load of wood for you. And just seeing, just that whole sharing that Spokane has done a good job. When crisis arises, it seems like we bond together very well as a community and something in the fabric of how we do it. And it's like, I'd like to keep that up all the time, where we share alike and we respond well and the lights don't go black. We don't live in the kind of city where we panic for looters and you better get your shotgun and stand by your front door, right? When a lot of cities in America, that would be the case. And we get to instead, step outside and go, wow, look at the stars, because you can finally see them clearly. Somebody else share something you were grateful for or thankful for.
Hi, I'm Jennifer. So I was born and raised on Oahu, and my daughter and I moved here 16 months ago. And so back home, people, they're like, oh, I'm homeless, I have nowhere to go. And you're like, okay, bye, have a good night, because it's warm and there's showers. And I mean, there's homelessness everywhere, but here in Spokane, it's so, it's so cold. So I was just thinking about all the people that don't have, even though the power is out, at least there's a little bit warmth left in your home, So I was just praying for all of those that didn't even have a roof over their heads and for them to be able to stay warm and hopefully have somewhere to go. And also my daughter, she's like, what are we going to do? And I kind of panicked. And then I'm like, okay, I'm her mom. I need to be strong, So she had to use the bathroom and I lit the candle. And then I was telling her, back in the old days, this is how the only source of light they had. She was like, did they ever get used to it? And I'm like, well, they had no other choice, And then I had bought like a big coffee on my way home. On Tuesday, I was at work at the Grand, and I left early because the windows were like, good. I thought they were going to come down, but I bought a big coffee, and then Wednesday morning I put on all the clothes that I owned, and I was outside, and I poured it like in a pot and like put it on the camp thing with the propane, and my daughter came out, and I was looking at her, and I'm like, time is something that you never get back. And then I was thinking like how I spend my time and where my time goes every day, and I spend a lot of time on the computer, and my daughter spends a lot of time on her iPad. And so I was just looking at her and thinking about, how blessed that I am, to have this amazing daughter. And she teaches me so much. And that night, it was cool because we too went to the dollar store and loaded up on those cool candles with like Jesus and Mary. And so we lit them and we like had a bunch of dollar store candy and candles, and we just talked. We talked for 3 hours. She's 6 years old, and I was like, so tell me what's going on in your life, So she talked, and I listened, and it was really cool that we were able to just spend time and just stay in the moment, and just grateful for, the time that we have, and not, because, you can be with people and under the same roof, you're doing your same thing, but it's not really the same, spending time. So I'm grateful for the time that we had, and that's all.
I think a lot of people experience that, okay, the TV's off, radio's off, everything's done. What do we do with each other? What do we do with each other, right? And experiencing that conversations that otherwise never would have taken place, and maybe returning to something different. Two things. One is, I know some of you still have issues like your power's down, or you've got branches or leaves in your yard, or cleanup, or fences that broke and need repairing. And what I'd like to do is, as a collective body, just offer ourselves as service to you. So if you are a person who's like, I need help cleaning my yard, I need help repairing a fence, I need help with something, shoot an email to us, office@gatheringhouse.org. All right, office@gatheringhouse.org. And just tell us what the need is, and we'll blast the word out through emails, and we'll try to get a crew over there and help you out. And I've actually, through the Nextdoor Garland website, said the same thing to the neighborhood. If anyone in the neighborhood just needs help, let us know. As a church, I think it'd be just a great response for us as a collective body to say, yeah, we can put some skills together and come and help someone who needs a yard cleared or something. And so that's one thing. And then the other thing is, we still might end up being a staging ground over the next few days. The city's still talking to me a little bit about that. If so, I'll need some help and some volunteers down here who are willing to. They teach and train you, give you handouts, go door to door, just check on families and people. So be aware that might be coming. If you don't hear from it, it means the city, altered their plans. I know that some of you lost hours of work because employment changed when you suddenly couldn't go to work because work was offline, and that's a hardship. Some of you have repair bills now that you didn't want to have and didn't wish you had. So what I'd like to do is just take a moment and pray for those financial needs for people in our church. If you'd bow your heads, let's just pray for that. Lord Jesus, thank you for how you've preserved us through this time. Thank you for what you've been teaching us through this time. Thank you so much that you've reawakened some of us towards kindness and towards appreciation, towards gratitude, towards conversation, towards generosity, towards all kinds of things that have just been lying quietly in our soul, and they're rising up now. And thank you for letting those things rise up. And so we, in many ways, Lord, we thank you for this storm. And there are those, Lord, in the room who it's a hardship because they lost hours at work, or there's a repair they have, and there's a financial constraint for them. And so, Lord, right now, collectively, we're just praying together that you would supply that need, that you would come with financial blessing from somewhere. You would come with someone who has skills and resources to repair or to fix something that will cost just minimal, that you would bless the people who are here, and that they would not look back with pain and anguish on what's happened, but they'd look with joy that my God took care of me during that time, that my Jesus looked out for me. And so, Lord, we're asking you to come with the rescuing powers that are at your disposal to meet the financial needs and the work needs that this body has. And Lord, if you can use us collectively to be a blessing to someone in this area who's not part of our church, we're committing ourselves to you, saying, okay, Lord, if you can use me to be kind and generous, to be a force of labor, to be a helper to someone else, go ahead and use me, Lord. Open those doors up. We want to commit ourselves to being your hands and your feet and your ministry in a world that right now needs you. And these things we ask in your holy name. Amen.